Successful investment banker Patrick Bateman leads a double life as a serial killer. Special guest Samantha Noah joins us to chat about Sweating on Command, pretentious music analysis, and what this movie's sequels should have been. Then we find out if American Psycho stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Test of Time. I'm James Brief, and with me as always is the director of the podcast, the American Psycho himself, Alan Noah.
I don't know how I feel about that, but I'll just interpret it that I'm well-dressed and have great abs, and I won't think about it beyond that. Thank you. I am Alan Noah, and I am joined by my sister, Samantha Noah, coming back on the show. Hi, Sam.
Hello, Halberstram.
No, I'm not Halberstram.
Al and Sam is almost like Halberstram, so...
Oh,
there was some
I
thought.
see what you did there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, welcome back on the show. It's been a minute since we've had you on.
Yeah.
A year-ish.
A year-ish.
When I saw that American Psycho was having its 25th anniversary, I immediately thought of you, which sounds bad. Sorry, I heard of American Psycho when I thought of my little baby sister. Oh. What I mean by that is you have quoted the movie repeatedly. I think most specifically the business card
I love
scene.
It. Yes, probably.
I feel like anytime I think of business cards, I imagine not just the scene from the movie, but you quoting the scene from the movie of, ooh, it's a raised font or whatever.
Do you want me to actually say it?
Please do it.
So he goes, that's bone. And the print is something called Silly and Rail. But then when they show them, everybody shows it, it's the exact same card.
Yeah.
And Patrick is sweating because he can't believe other people have better cards. But I will say, I noticed a couple of things. First of all, every one of their cards says vice president.
Yes.
And acquisitions is misspelled.
Yes, I did notice that too. It is AQU,
yeah.
Not ACQU.
Yeah.
But you don't just quote the business card scene in your day-to-day life. You also have seen the movie a bunch of times. You've read the book, too.
Yes. The book is way beyond anything that they could ever make into a movie. So as descriptive as he is about what people are wearing and haircuts and glasses and the luxury brands in the movie, the book is every accessory. When they go out to a restaurant, it's what everybody eats. It's super detailed, and I mean, the violence and the sex, it's just way more graphic. Initially, I think the movie was going to be NC-17, and they had to cut it back.
And this is the book by Bret Easton Ellis. Bret Easton Ellis.
Right, and Bret Easton Ellis considered the book to be unfilmable,
right,
and was kind of against the idea of turning his book into a movie. He says it's fine. Like, he's very, like, middle of the road on it. He's not nasty about it, but he's like, yeah, she did a good job, but it didn't need to be made. It could have not been made. And I haven't read the book, but from what I was reading and just some research,
it's disgusting.
And, like, a lot more murders. Like,
a lot more murders.
Like, in the movie, I think we only see him kill, excluding, like, that end rampage.
Right.
Before that, I think you only see him kill maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 people, but in the book it's like a lot more than that.
Yeah.
However, in the movie, doesn't he confess to so many more murders than we see?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that is sort of a reference to the book, because in that confession he also says, I ate their brains and they can grow, and that is in the book.
Yeah, there's a lot in the book. There's something with a rat and cheese inside of a prostitute. There's a lot.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We are getting ahead of ourselves.
Way ahead.
Right. Let's talk about American Psycho. For anyone who hasn't seen it, the movie is set in New York City in the late 80s, and Patrick Bateman is an investment banker who looks and acts like countless other finance bros, with one major exception, and that is that Patrick enjoys killing people. He spends time with his fiancée, Evelyn, who he doesn't like. He's cheating on Evelyn with her friend Courtney, who's engaged to Patrick's friend Lewis. When Patrick discovers that his coworker Paul Allen has a better business card, Patrick murders him. He also kills a model, a sex worker, a homeless man, and many others. After an especially violent night, Patrick confesses his crimes to his lawyer, but the lawyer thinks it's all a joke, and Patrick accepts that he is in perpetual pain and that his confession means nothing. So, I believe that this movie was not a big box office hit when it came out and kind of developed more of a cult following later. Is that right, James?
That's correct. When it came out on April 14th, 2000, it had a modest budget, a $7 million budget. It opened at number 7 with just under $5 million. It wound up with $15 million domestically, $34 million worldwide. So, this was not a flop by any means. Kind of broke even maybe at the box office, and who knows what the box office take is worldwide. It definitely developed some made-for-TV sequel, not made-for-TV, made-for-DVD sequels.
I thought it was just one.
Well, at least one then.
Oh, God, don't waste your time.
Well, there's one other film that's not exactly a sequel or a spin-off or anything, but it's supposed to be perhaps in the same universe. That's that other film, The Rules of Attraction.
Yes.
Right, where I think James Van Der Beek's character is perhaps a cousin of
brother.
Patrick, or a
brother. He's Sean
okay.
Bateman.
And it's because that movie is an adaptation of another Bret Easton Ellis novel.
Yes,
Right,
so
right,
it's
right.
those two. In the movies, they really don't even mention each other. In the book, it's a little bit more in depth.
I was going to say, I knew of American Psycho 2 with Mila Kunis, and I didn't watch it because I've heard it is
awful,
atrocious. I do a little bit think that they screwed up. Like, if you have American Psycho and you're going to make a sequel, don't make American Psycho 2. Make Canadian Psycho. Make Australian Psycho. A Finnish Psycho. Icelandic Psycho.
It's
You
not Love is Blind.
Now,
you
can have fun with that.
Now, would you go the airplane route and Australian Psycho only kills like a boomerang and things that Americans would think an Australian would do?
No, I think you could just have a lot of fun making this into a franchise with many different sequels. But yeah, American Psycho 2. That's just lazy.
It's interesting that we're doing American Psycho today because a few weeks ago, Alan and I had the opportunity to talk with someone who's very knowledgeable about films, Jonathan Weissler, and we discussed Empire of the Sun.
Right.
And that is the film that launched Christian Bale's career. And, Christian Bale had some other success as a child. He was in Newsies, and he did other stuff. But I remember this film, when this came out, they were talking a lot about Christian Bale, and it was kind of this, look, he's back. And I think this kind of relaunched his career.
Well, he's totally method.
Yeah.
So he's kind of notoriously a pain in the ass. I remember there was a big controversy at the time. I forget which movie it was, but he lost his mind on the director, and there was a whole big dust up.
Terminator.
It was. That's what
Terminator
I thought.
Salvation.
Okay, I never bothered to see it, so I didn't
it's
retain
awful.
it. I was wondering what it was like for him to be method with this. Like, did he go around killing people, or was he just...
No, but he didn't drop the accent.
No.
And he did all of these interviews in character as Patrick Bateman.
That's cool.
He met Bret Easton Ellis in character.
Okay.
And Bret Easton Ellis was creeped the fuck out that, this creation of his was in front of him talking to him. A lot of people on set apparently didn't realize that he was British. And then
Welsh, actually.
Welsh. Okay,
Yes.
fair.
I read the same page as you.
Okay, but I thought that was interesting that they thought he
I had
was
no idea.
that he was doing a fake accent then,
Right?
Because he had been talking in the American accent in between takes, throughout the production. And the movie was not supposed to star Christian Bale. The studio really wanted it to be Leonardo DiCaprio.
I can't picture that. I read the same thing, and I can't see that at all.
And Mary Harron, the director, really advocated for Christian Bale. Did you see in the same article that I read, apparently, who talked Leonardo DiCaprio out of starring in this movie?
I don't remember.
Was it Carrot Top?
No, that's a terrible guess. Although you wouldn't have guessed the actual answer. Gloria Steinem.
I did know that. Yeah.
Okay.
They went to a baseball game.
Yes, and she said that after Titanic, he had all of these young female fans, and so it would be really damaging for him to be in this movie doing all of this violence against women, and she begged him not to. And then the funny postscript to that story is that later Gloria Steinem married Christian Bale's father. So now she is the mother-in-law of the guy who played this character that she was dead set against. And then you could conspiracy theory it of like, well, did you talk Leo out of this movie just to help your future son-in-law? And she says that's not true. And, that was just a coincidence or whatever.
Was it mother-in-law or stepmother? It's
stepmother. I guess, yeah, it's stepmother. Yeah, you're right.
You should know all about blended families.
I guess you're right. But it is weird to imagine Leonardo DiCaprio in this role, and Oliver Stone was going to direct it.
Yeah, that would have been weird. It would have been a completely different movie. Oliver Stone, it might have been good with him, but Leo, I can't see him in that role. So.
I disagree slightly. I mean, he's kind of crazy in parts of The Departed.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street. I think he could pull it off. I mean, it would be very different, but in another universe, it would be interesting to see the Leonardo DiCaprio version of this film.
I think it would be more interesting because of what Oliver Stone wanted to do. He had a very, very different vision. Mary Harron's vision of it was not a psychological deep dive of the character. The studio was telling her, we need to explore Patrick Bateman, his parents, his siblings, and kind of like to your point about the brother. Yeah. It's not in the movie
because it's not important.
It's not important, and she was not interested in exploring the why of the character.
You get nothing.
Right, he's a monster.
You get no context.
She wanted it to be this guy's a monster. That's it.
And I think they did that well. I like that they kept it very what the fuck. I mean, the category of this movie is mindfuck for sure. The beginning is really interesting because he tells you where he lives before he tells you his name, which is really kind of interesting given how superficial the whole movie is through his lens. Yeah. It's like he says, well, I live in the Winter Gardens building, blah, 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 blah. My name is Patrick Bateman. So the fact that he doesn't do that first, I always kind of thought was interesting. It's like, all right, like his priority.
But it's also in line with this idea of the movie about identity.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, because his identity is in question throughout.
He's a very unreliable narrator, and that is so important to this movie. Patrick Bateman is not reliable. He's narrating it, which, by the way, voiceover, how do you feel?
I think this is the type of movie where you do kind of need the voiceover because it is all told from his point of view, and that's the point. The point is that you are seeing the world through this character's eyes. You can say that this movie is a commentary on 1980s excess and materialism and capitalism and all of those things, and that's true. But it's not a statement on all of those things in general. It is a statement of those things told from the perspective of Patrick Bateman. So the voiceover is needed, and it's not the annoying kind of voiceover that I hate of it's explaining things to the audience that the audience could clearly figure out on their own. It's understanding his perspective.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is a character who clearly has mental illness, and this is something you can literally get into his head. What he's thinking in his head doesn't match the things that we're seeing visually or that he's saying verbally. So that's why the voiceover is important.
It is. And even when they're first going to the first restaurant and I don't know the exact quote, I should know, but he says something about, I'm almost in tears by the time we get to Espas because I'm worried about whether or not we're going to have a good table. And as soon as he walks in, he goes, relief washes over me in an awesome wave. It's like, yeah, you would never know walking in how nervous he is that the table is not going to be good enough. One of the really cool things about Christian Bale is he can sweat on command.
Yes.
And you see that throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. I wonder how you do that.
A gland control?
You would know, Doc. I mean...
I imagine he's thinking of something incredibly stressful and that allows him to sweat. I mean, he's that good of an actor that his body legitimately thinks he's being chased by a cougar and has to be sweating.
Speaking of his body, did you guys ever see The Machinist?
No.
Have you ever seen images?
Yeah, where he's super fucking skinny.
It's scary.
And I think this was the first movie that he did the thing of transforming his body for the role, because when he first met with Mary Harron, he was not in particularly good shape, and she said, hey, if you want this role, hit the gym, and he really hit the gym and worked himself into amazing shape.
Yeah.
I think he even got dental work done.
He did. He did. He made his teeth perfect because he said, I guess it was veneers. He didn't like his teeth for Patrick Bateman, so he went and got them done. Did you notice when he's doing the crunches, speaking of his body, what movie he had on?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Texas Chainsaw Massacre is loosely Ed Gein, and he mentions Ed Gein later on, too. He says, you know what I think of when I see a pretty woman? I think of what her head would look like on a stick.
That's what Ed Gaines said.
Yeah. And Patrick is quoting him to his friends very casually.
I think it's interesting you bring up that first scene when Patrick is so obsessed with the restaurant and getting the right table and everything. He's like, I'm really concerned about what's going on with
Sri
apartheid
Lanka,
and Sri Lanka and the environment. And, these are all, not things you would suspect an axe murderer would say.
Right.
And it's interesting, he has that moral code,
right.
But if you have a better business card than him,
you're dead.
oh, you're dead. You got to go.
You think that's an actual moral code? Like those things that he's saying?
Whether he believes them or not, I don't know at this point. I'm watching the movie and I'm seeing a guy in the first scene. Like, he's a good guy. Look at all these things he's saying. And then you slowly get the breakdown.
It's just to impress other people. Everything he's saying,
Yes.
I don't think he believes any of it, honestly. I think it makes him look good.
Right.
Because the whole thing with him is image and facade. That's all he says. He even says to Evelyn, I want to fit in.
Right.
That's it.
And I think that is the only time in the entire movie where he says something out loud to someone else that is true. When he's talking about slowing down the nuclear arms race and building civil rights and all that, it is purely performative. He's saying what he thinks they want to hear.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about helping the homeless, and literally 5 minutes later, he stabs and murders a homeless man for the crime of being homeless.
Do you know who the homeless guy is?
Yes, it's shit, I'm gonna forget his name.
It's not necessarily the name, but where do we know him from originally?
He looked so familiar. His name is like Reg A something.
Reg E. Kathy.
Okay.
Square One.
Right. Yes. Square One Television. Yes.
Yeah. So after we were done and I was taking notes, I was telling Ryan about Square One, and I said I have to bring it up to my brother because he's probably one of very few people who know what that show is. And I found like a YouTube clip. Of course you do. You guys are smart people, but nobody else watched a math show. But I mean, I showed him a clip, and it's just, I mean, it's so dated. But yes, he was on that. He's been in a lot of things. He passed away since, but he was a character actor. But the first thing I thought of was, I have to bring up Square One.
There was a detective show in that show. Do you remember what it was called?
MathNet.
Right, felt like Dragnet. Yeah. And they would use math to solve crimes. Well, Al, it's funny you say that the only thing that you find truthful that Patrick ever says is that line about, I just want to fit in. What do you think of his long, impassionate monologues about, like, Phil Collins and Susudio? What he does with this one is, it's a marvel. And what do you think of what he's saying there? Is that another performance? Is he just reading New York Times reviews of it or something?
Probably.
I think so. I think what he says about music is also performative. It's Phil Collins, Whitney Houston, and Huey Lewis, where he goes on these rants about them. It's all pop music. And I'm not saying that in a negative or a dismissive way. You can have very serious analyses of pop music, but it doesn't really seem like he really cares. He really knows. It does seem like, he read this in an article or Rolling Stone or something, and he's regurgitating it. Those scenes also did hit a little too close to home for me personally, because I was like, is this what I sound like when I talk about music? I hope not.
You don't sound like that anymore.
Oh, okay.
However, you did take, I don't know if it was one class, but at least one class when we were at Cornell about the history of American music.
History of rock and roll.
And you talked about your knowledge of that very much. Well, actually, I will tell you to this day, whenever I see any reference to, I think it's the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, right? And you would just impassionately say, everything in all of American rock would not happen if it wasn't for that album. I knew you're just basically telling me what your professor said. You're agreeing with him or her, of course, but it was very like, I knew at the time, you 21-year-old pretentious little shit.
Well, first off, 100% of that is correct. Yes, I was regurgitating it, but also, yes, it is true that everything did come from that album. And I'm glad that you remember that, even if it was 21-year-old pretentious little prick Alan. That is a still correct statement, and I'm glad that you remember it all these years later. And you should tell other people in a maybe less douchey, pretentious way. But I think, getting back to your point, when he is going on and on about the music, does he really care? about Huey
He's
Lewis.
making himself sound smart, and he's also distracting them.
Yes.
Because that's what it is. I mean, the first one with Huey Lewis, he's getting ready to murder Paul Allen, getting the raincoat ready and, getting the axe out. With Whitney Houston, with The Greatest Love of All, she did not approve of the music being used in this movie. So
It's a sound-alike.
it is a sound-alike, which I guess kind of makes sense. But then you think about it, it's like, well, Whitney, you weren't the greatest role model towards the end of your life. I mean, you were pissed about murder, but you were a crackhead.
Yes, but then also, for me, now I'll sound music pretentious asshole
Here
guy.
we go.
Choose a different song.
Right.
If you don't get the rights to it, pick a different song that you can
That's
get the
fair.
rights to. I thought the sound-alike was distracting.
But to somebody who didn't know that tidbit, it sounds like the song.
It sounds close enough like
Close
it where
enough.
if you're listening to what Patrick Bateman is saying, you're not focused on the music.
Right.
But after using the real Phil Collins and the real Huey Lewis, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
If Whitney Houston says no, that sucks. Pick a different song.
Fair.
I think the other thing is that what Patrick Bateman says in voiceover in the beginning of the movie is true, where he says that he's not there. Like when he's taking off the mask. He doesn't care about anything other than fitting in, like he
in.
says to Evelyn. Yeah. So, yeah, he doesn't care about Huey Lewis. He cares about fitting in. He cares about murdering people. He cares about the reservations at Dorsia. Not because of the food and because it's, a great wine list or anything. It's because he wants to tell people that he got into Dorsia.
And once Paul Allen said he had an 8:00 reservation that night.
On a Friday.
It was when it was total tailspin time for Patrick. I mean, because he tried to get it, pretended he did get the reservation. Meanwhile, the maitre d' is laughing at him because it's probably been booked up for 6 months.
Right, and fortunately he's with Courtney, the woman that he's having the affair with, who is so drugged out of her mind.
Yeah.
She doesn't
know the difference anyway.
Right, the menu in big letters says Arcadia or something, and he's like, here we are at Dorsia, and she's like, great!
Yeah, she's barely conscious the whole time.
Right. So the book, from what I've heard, is extremely misogynistic. Bret Easton Ellis has been accused of misogyny, just kind of in general. I don't really know enough about him to say if that's true or not. But the movie is directed by a woman,
right?
Mary Harron. It was co-written by Genevieve Turner, who plays the friend of Patrick Bateman.
Oh, okay, the one towards the end.
Yeah, like in the second threesome with Christy,
yes.
the sex worker.
Right.
So she co-wrote it. And so there is kind of this dichotomy, that it's based on a book written by a man, co-written by these two women, directed by a woman. Patrick Bateman kills men and women.
Yeah.
But he is vicious
towards
the women.
He tortures the women.
And, it's even to the point where, like, without the violence, and we'll get to the end and if the violence is real in a little bit, but I think even if you took that away, if he doesn't actually kill these women, he is still a fucking awful human to these women. I mean, before anyone was using the words toxic masculinity, he embodies toxic masculinity.
Right, because he has his fiancée, who's Evelyn, Reese Witherspoon, who has no patience for her. Looks like he hates her.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's cheating with her best friend, Courtney, who's on drugs all the time.
Right.
In between, he's finding time to solicit all these prostitutes.
And Jean. Don't forget about Jean. His assistant.
Chloe Sevigny.
Who's clearly enamored with him.
Right.
And he's taking advantage of her.
Right.
And Jean and Christy are the only two people in the movie who see through the mask. They see that this guy is fucking dangerous. In part, because Gene goes through his diary at the end and sees all the images, so that's a little bit of a cheat. But the only two people who see through him are working class people.
Right.
Everyone else who's in this, rich,
tier,
elite, 0.01% of the population, no one cares. Even when he says, I'm into murders and executions.
Instead of mergers and acquisitions. I love that. I've actually always thought that was so clever.
Yeah.
Because they sound so much alike that it doesn't faze anybody, even if they do pick up on it.
Right. And I think from what little I know about the business world, mergers and acquisitions is kind of like murdering and executing companies and businesses.
Probably. We don't see them do 1 minute of work.
Not
no
a
work
second.
At all. When Willem Dafoe, who's Detective Kimball, comes in, he's twirling a dead prostitute's hair.
Right.
He's really sitting around doing nothing. He never does any work. None of them do.
And they're all vice president.
Right. They're all vice presidents. Kind of weird. Evelyn says your father practically owns the company.
Right.
And that's when he says, I want to fit in. We don't really know the context of that. Again, they don't get into it because it doesn't really matter.
Right.
What did you guys think of Willem Dafoe?
I like him in this movie. I read one thing which I thought was really hilarious when he's interrogating Patrick over lunch. Mary Harron had him do 3 different takes.
Yes.
One where he thinks that Patrick is a suspect, one where he doesn't think he's a suspect, and one kind of in between. And she used a little bit of each of those 3 takes so that you as the audience and Patrick in character don't know what's going on in his mind. Like, you're just thrown off.
That's very interesting because I thought that he knew Patrick was the bad guy. And I was like, oh, this is like one of those detective shows where he's getting suspicious. And I didn't really remember what happens to his character in the film because it's been a while since I'd seen it. So I was wondering if this is the guy that catches him at the end. But that's not where it goes.
It's weird, too. If you're a detective, why are you telling him all of these details from the case? Well, no, I don't have you there this time. I have you here. Oh, right. I was watching Africa, Sweet Africa, whatever. Like, he comes up with all these excuses to counterpoint where he actually was. But the fact that Detective Kimball is telling him all these details, I mean, if you're investigating a murder, you wouldn't really be telling the potential suspect all of these clues to help him out. I thought that was kind of weird why he was using him like as a go-to.
Right. And I've never been investigated for murder,
Yet.
but I would imagine,
Yeah.
but I would imagine if the day ever comes, do the police take me out to lunch?
That's what I'm saying.
Ask me
It's very
questions?
weird.
Well, this guy isn't a cop. To be clear, he is a private
That's
investigator
true.
hired by
right,
Paul
right.
Allen's
Okay.
girlfriend.
You're
So
right.
because of that, I do think that maybe gives it a little bit of leeway. But it does seem like, as an investigator, he's more enamored with Patrick Bateman and kind of just wants to hang out with him and go to a fancy steakhouse for lunch with this guy and chit-chat with him. And the thing about Paul Allen's disappearance is that nobody really knows for sure because nobody knows who anybody is.
That's the joke. Is
That
that
is the joke.
everybody is interchangeable.
Yes.
Upon the first meeting with the business cards, he's talking about Marcus Halberstram and how Paul Allen has him confused because they both wear the same Oliver Peoples glasses and they go to the same barber, although Patrick Bateman has a slightly better haircut.
Right.
Which is such a ridiculous statement. But with him, it's all superficial.
And they all do look
Alike.
exactly the same.
Yeah.
The guy played by Justin Theroux looks a little more handsome because that's Justin Theroux.
Right.
But all of these guys look exactly the same. And yeah, at the end, the lawyer thinks he's someone else when he's on his rampage and he runs into the building that he thinks is his office building, but it isn't. The security guard calls him like, oh, hello, Mr. Doyle or whatever.
Burning the midnight oil.
Yeah. With the alibi with Paul Allen, he was mistaken for somebody else in London.
Right.
So it does sort of beg kind of the bigger picture question, which I guess now is a good segue to get into it. Is the violence that we see in the movie real? Does Patrick Bateman really kill all of these people? What do you think, Sam?
So he doesn't. And they give you a lot of hints as to what's going on with his head. He's at an ATM and it says, feed me a stray cat.
Right.
That right there is a very clear indication of things not being real and him kind of being a little bit delusional.
Yeah.
Have you ever used an ATM that said to feed you a stray cat?
Just the ones.
Okay.
Well, and that kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier about him being an unreliable narrator.
He's the least reliable narrator because he's telling you all these things and he's showing you all these things. And then there's like little indications when he's at the dry cleaner, they show you the white comforter that's covered in what clearly is blood. And he tells the woman that he knows that it's just cranberry juice. I mean, probably not. It looked like blood, but once you kind of get more into his head and you realize that he's going to visit the apartment where he left Paul Allen's body in his mind, and he goes to show up and there's a realtor there and the apartment's completely cleaned out. It's for rent. Like, there's no body there. There probably never was.
Well, see, that's interesting. I interpreted that scene a little bit differently.
How did you?
Because the realtor knows that this guy is fucking suspicious.
Oh, yeah.
She says, oh, you saw the listing in the New York Times? And he says, no. Oh, yeah, the New York Times. And she says, there was no listing in the New York Times. Leave and don't cause trouble.
Yeah.
So I think there were bodies in that apartment. They were cleaned out. Yeah, you would think she would say, oh my God, I'm calling the cops. But also, no, she's going to get one hell of a commission on this apartment.
Right.
She doesn't want him to cause any trouble. She doesn't want to cause any trouble. And that's sort of a theme throughout the movie, is that the way he's getting away with the murders is no one gives a shit.
Well, and that's the thing, because if you think about it on like a realer level, which is hard to do with this movie,
Yeah.
mostly, not totally, but he kills or goes after prostitutes and like homeless people, which I just finished watching the Gilgo thing, and it's sad to say, and I do not feel this way, but the mentality is sometimes that these are not real people, just like in Succession. You know, these are not real people. They don't matter to somebody of that stature who's that financially sound. They don't care about prostitutes. They don't care about homeless. They don't think anybody's going to miss them.
It's what you think a psycho would think.
Right.
But even then, when he kills Paul Allen, he can get away with that murder too, because they all look the same and no one cares. He drags the body out of the building.
Right.
His friend sees him dragging a body and then says, "Oh my God, look at that overnight bag."
But that's what I'm saying. If it really happened and there's security in the building, they would see the blood trail. There's clues that it's not really going on. With the realtor too, I think she just got his energy. She felt his energy. She caught him in a lie and she was like, "Get out of here." I don't think there were any bodies ever.
You think he killed 0 people?
I don't think he killed anybody.
Okay, James, what do you think?
I was very confused by some of this stuff. I didn't really catch on to the whole fact that everyone was interchangeable necessarily. So when the lawyer at the end was like, he saw Paul Allen a week ago, I was like, wait, is this guy just insane? And honestly, I was very confused by it. I didn't really know what the ending meant.
A lot of people get confused by the ending because there is really no closure. It's just kind of, what the hell? It's a mindfuck movie, you know?
I can't answer your question now. I have no idea whether he killed people.
Okay, that's totally fair. So the way I remember the movie was that it was a unreliable narrator, total mindfuck, and that no one dies. It's all in his head.
Yeah.
That's how I went into watching the movie the other day. Now, I'm not so sure. I was really thinking about it, like, if it's all in his head, I don't understand what the movie is. Like, I can't wrap my head around what the movie is saying, what it means. Like, I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I was like, is it all just a metaphor, and the violence is a metaphor for classic run-of-the-mill misogyny and douchebag male behavior? Like, if you stripped all the violence out and you just have a movie about this guy who is just an asshole and he treats all of the women around him like shit, and that's just kind of a commentary on men who are assholes, would that be an interesting movie? Probably not. The way you make it a movie that people want to see is you layer on the violence. Like Sopranos. The Sopranos is a deep dive into a character, and how can you make it interesting about, you know, this guy's trauma and why he is the way he is? Well, because there's also scenes of murder and mob stuff.
Sopranos is a perfect show.
Sure. But so I'm just saying, like, I was thinking about that, but I did look it up because I was just really curious and I really wanted to know. Bret Easton Ellis says that in his novel, he doesn't know. He created Patrick Bateman and he's not sure if it's real, if it's not real, if it's in his head or not, maybe a little combination. He doesn't know, and he doesn't want to make it explicit because he feels that it is the reader's decision to make. Part of why he thought this book would be unfilmable was because of that. He said in a movie, you can't do that. You can't just have it be totally ambiguous. You need to lead the audience one direction or another.
That's why I like it, because it is totally ambiguous.
Well, so according to Mary Harron and Genevieve Turner,
Okay.
it is real. Patrick Bateman kills these women when the ATM machine tells him to feed the stray cat, when he shoots at the cop car with a handgun and it blows up in this huge explosion. Some of these things might not be real. He is delusional. He does have mental illness.
For sure.
Some of these things are not real and he is hallucinating, but at least according to them, he is killing people. Mary Harron said something about, like, I hate it when you watch a movie and then at the end, it was all a dream. So she really didn't want to do that. And I do think that that does sort of make the movie land a little bit more. But to your point, Sam, I think there is a fine line between a movie that's ambiguous and a movie that's confusing. And I think you're kind of saying it's more ambiguous, Sam, and you, James, are saying it was more confusing because you watched the movie and you were like, huh? I don't get it. Usually you want it to be ambiguous, not confusing. And I'm kind of more on your side, James, where I feel like the movie doesn't really nail it. And
because of the nail gun.
Oh,
right, the nail gun.
No, that's not what I meant.
Jean almost got in the back of the head with a nail gun.
She did.
Yep.
I think the movie is trying to be ambiguous and ends up being a bit confusing at the end.
That's fair.
I don't want movies to handhold and, explain everything, and I don't like that. I like it when there's more ambiguity, and I appreciate what they were going for, but I feel like it does kind of end in a way that is confusing. I'm sure it's not just you, James.
Oh, it's not. I watched it with my fiance the other day, and he's seen it before. Ryan and I have watched it before, and he had the same takeaway as you, James. He's like, what am I watching?
You know, there's one scene that I definitely remember because it's a very visually memorable moment. There's a sex worker that escapes from when he murders his friend.
Yep.
And she's running down this stairwell.
Yep.
And Patrick drops the chainsaw down the middle of the stairwell. And we don't see it happen, but she looks down and she's dead at the bottom of the stairwell.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense to me how this woman would possibly run in the path of this chainsaw. I always thought it was kind of weird.
And nobody
how she
heard a
gets nailed.
chainsaw in the middle of the night. Nobody's caught him running around naked. A chainsaw is not quiet.
That too. She's banging on all these doors.
Yeah,
and it is New York
she's
City.
screaming. It's on chainsaw in the middle of the night.
But no one cares. These people who live there, they don't care. They're not getting involved.
It's true. Maybe it's the 1980s New York, so it's still one of those the Warriors New York,
Right,
quote unquote. So it's all open the door and you'll be stabbed and murdered. In this case, possibly true.
I sort of interpreted the chainsaw thing as that maybe it hit her like as she was running down, and that would have killed her. But then you do see it stuck in her back. If you're running down the stairs and the chainsaw falls and it hits you, and then maybe you kind of topple over, like maybe it hits your arm, and I don't know. You could say the same thing about the cop car too, where there's no way that a couple of little bullets from this little handgun would make the car explode. Probably true, but maybe there was a gasoline leak in that police car that nobody knew about. I'm not saying it's likely, because I don't think it is, but maybe technically
Do you
possible?
think he really massacred that many cops? That's the thing, is that it's so far-fetched, the chainsaw, dragging the body out. Maybe people don't care, but at the same time, think these things would be noticeable enough. I mean, with all the cops, he's gonna just kill all those cops and walk away from it and it's fine. Which is why he felt the need to call his lawyer to confess.
Right.
And then the lawyer thinks it's a prank, is talking to him and saying, oh, Patrick Bateman, that was the best part because he's such a pussy. He would never do that. Meanwhile, Patrick, you can see him welling up and getting super frustrated and sweaty because he's like, I'm Patrick Bateman. The lawyer is so uncomfortable with it because he feels his energy that Patrick believes what he's telling him, but then it gets even creepier because none of it seems real to the lawyer.
Right. And then it also is, he does want to fit in.
Yeah.
That's the only thing he wants. Also, though, he wants to stand out, like with the business cards and the Dorsia and everything.
Right.
So, and that's kind of just the inherent contradiction. For a lot of people, you want to fit in and you want to stand out at the same time. He fits in so much that even killing people, he's a fucking serial killer. And even that doesn't make him stand out. Even his hero, Ed Gein, Ted Bundy, the people who he's quoting, he can't even achieve that status because of the world that he lives in, where killing all of these people, okay, ha ha ha, LOL, not really. Which, in a way is tragic for society, really, if that's true.
Right.
Like, holy shit.
From that lens, I like that, actually, the way you're framing it. Because in my head, it's always been, dude's fucked up. He didn't do anything. So for you to say, but what if he did and just nobody gives a shit? I kind of like that perspective, too.
Honestly, I think that if I subscribe to your theory that he kills no one, then I don't like this movie. Okay. I think the movie is just kind of pointless. And I'm not even saying that in like a obnoxious way. I mean, I don't understand the point of what the movie is.
Fair.
In my opinion, if the violence is real, then there is a point.
Okay.
And you can like that point or not. But let me ask you, Sam, about the movie as a whole. Do you think it stands the test of time?
So before I answer that, there are funny lines and things that he sprinkles in that are just so 80s, right? Like, I have to return some videotapes, which is such a weird alibi for everything, right? Like, he says it to Kimball. He was like, oh, I think I was returning some videotapes. Well, how long does that take?
Right.
That's such a shitty alibi. It's like 2 seconds, right?
True.
Even if you go inside to drop them off, it's 2 seconds. If you use a stupid little Dropbox blockbuster you set, right? Like, it wouldn't take very long. So it's just weird. And then at one point he says he has a lunch date with the Huxtables. You know, like
Cliff Huxtable.
Cliff Huxtable. Like, he has a lot of 80s references besides the musical tirades. So those I kind of like. I just think they're funny. Aside from that, though, I do think it stands the test of time because mental illness is real. Yeah. Narcissism is very real. Living in your own head and caring so much what other people think is more real now than ever, I think. There was no social media then. There was no, dare I say, no president who is the biggest narcissist on the planet. You know, given the way of the world now with social media and the constant need for look at me, look at me, look at me, approve me, I think that theme, even though it was in his head and it was in the 80s, I think that is even more abundant now to the point of being even scarier. So yes, I think it stands the test of time.
That's one Noah yes vote. Let's see what the other Noah thinks. Al, do you think American Psycho stands the test of time?
Well, before I answer that, I do want to jump on the social media thing because I had that exact same thought.
High five.
High five. There you go. Because what these guys are doing, it's the same social media posturing that we all do, right? Like the business cards, it's just like, what does everyone post? Everyone posts the same shit. This, I will say, I am guilty of. Everyone posts a picture of the kids on the first day of school holding up the sign.
Right.
I do that. Right. And, you know, when it's Courtney's birthday, happy birthday to my love, like everyone else does. And I'm trying to stand out, and I try to put a little bit of a witty Alan Noah spin on those posts. But you know who else does that? Everybody. And also even the whole thing with Dorcia. That's very social media-esque.
Oh my God,
You go to the place so you can post the picture that you were at the place. Right. And this movie takes place in the 80s, so that's not the thing. But it still is, oh, I was at Dorcia last night. I'm going to Dorcia tomorrow. It's all about the status of it. Yep. Yes. And so all of that stuff feels really... Not even that it stands the test of time. It seems prophetic that this movie came out in 2000 based on a book set in, or I think the book was written in like the early 90s, but set in the 80s. Like it feels like this stuff is ahead of its time.
I had the same feeling that a lot of it was like, wow, not only does it stand the test of time, but it almost predicted it.
Yeah. And to your point about the mental health of it all and the delusions, and you can get stuck on the how unreliable is this narrator, how much of this happened versus how much didn't. That's what movie podcasts are for, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to do here. But I think that with or without it, it's about toxic masculinity. It's about narcissism, excess, greed, consumerism, cruelty, all of these things that are unfortunately still things today. And this movie has kind of become sort of a big thing in meme culture, in the, I fucking hate this word, manosphere, where Patrick Bateman is considered a sigma, which is somehow different from an alpha. I don't know enough about this to explain the difference, but people watch this movie and think, man, Patrick Bateman's so cool. I want to be like him. Which is like, no. You have radically misunderstood this movie if that's your fucking takeaway.
Right. We
were talking about Leonardo DiCaprio and Wolf of Wall Street. People look at that guy in that movie and think the same thing.
Right.
And no, bro, if that's your takeaway, you didn't get it.
You weren't paying attention. And that's shitty, but that doesn't mean the movie doesn't stand the test of time. It means that people don't get it. I'm going to say that the movie does stand the test of time. I will be honest, this was my second time watching it all the way through. I am not going to watch it all the way through again anytime soon, just because it's not really my cup of tea with the violence and the cruelty and all of that. But the direction is amazing. The writing is incredible. Christian Bale is phenomenal. The way he portrays this guy who can say all of the right things and be in all the right places, and he is just dead behind the fucking eyes. I mean, that's creepy as fuck, and it takes a great actor to do it. Because of all of those things, yes, I think the movie does stand the test of time. So we're 2 for 2 so far. James, what do you think?
You know, I agree with you, Al. This is a kind of film I don't think I'm going to be watching anytime soon. It's not a fun movie in any way.
That's so weird. I find it to be such a fun movie. Is something wrong
I
with me?
disagree. It's not fun. Christian Bale is so good in it. There aren't many actors, even good actors, that could pull off this role, and he does a very good job of it. I don't find the movie fun, but I don't think it ever makes you bored in any way. It's quite interesting. You don't quite have any idea what's going on at certain points. However, the movie, it's quite well made. The director did a very good job. The cast, they got very lucky, or they just did such a great job of casting these people. The woman who plays the sex worker, she does a very good job of being very scared of him. All the pieces fit together in this film. It was entertaining for me. Yes, I do think the film does stand the test of time. Maybe I'll visit this again in 20 years, but I'm good for certainly the 2020s and probably the 2030s.
That's fair. I don't know if you've heard, but they're talking about doing not necessarily a remake, but a new adaptation of the novel.
Is it going to be a cartoon?
No, it's going to be directed by Luca, I'm going to say this guy's name wrong, Guadagnino. He directed Queer with Daniel Craig. That was like a big indie hit. It's not going to be a remake of the movie, but a reinterpretation of the source novel, which, to your point and what we were saying earlier, how?
I'm curious to see what they do with that. I find this movie to be a comedy. A lot of it to me is so fun. Maybe I'm fucked. I don't know.
No. I think it was supposed to be a black comedy. That was definitely what they were going for. That was something that Mary Harron said, that a lot of people who were, in the orbit of the movie in like the early pre-production stages didn't get it in the way that she did, which is that, there's humor here.
Oh my God. With the whole thing with Sabrina and Christy, he's going on his whole long tirade about Phil Collins, I believe.
Yeah.
While wearing a tuxedo for no fucking reason. Why are you wearing a tux? And then he interrupts himself, don't just stare at it, eat it, which is another great line. I mean, it's funny. It's a funny movie. I think if you look at it through that scope, it's that much better.
Yes.
So I don't agree with it not being a fun movie. I think it's hilarious.
But actually, I think it was that scene that got the movie the NC-17 rating originally. And Mary Harron's theory on that was that it was a sex scene that isn't particularly graphic. The problem was that the women didn't seem to be enjoying it. And they ended up cutting like a couple of seconds out of the sex scene. The line was, bend over to show her your asshole, and then they changed it to bend over to show her your ass.
Oh, okay.
And so that and whatever seconds they cut out is how it went from NC-17 to R. Go figure, who the hell understands that whole thing. But just one other thing while we were talking about social media, that opening scene where he's describing his whole skincare routine, I think that was supposed to be satire and just hilarious. And that joke, I think, kind of doesn't work as comedy now because that is social media. You can see a million videos on TikTok of people
skincare routine.
Yeah, walking you through their morning ritual.
We know 12-year-old boys who have a whole skincare routine. So,
sure, with the scrubs
and the layering, right?
Exactly. So in a way, that joke kind of doesn't land, but also in another way, well, that also very much is also ahead of its time.
Yeah.
So depending on your point of view.
One other thing that I forgot before, when we were talking about Whitney Houston not giving approval, there were a lot of fashion houses too.
Yes.
That I think the garment bag where he supposedly has Paul Allen was supposed to be Comme des Garçons or whatever, and it ended up being Jean-Paul Gaultier.
Yeah.
They did not let the word Rolex be used. He says, don't touch the watch.
Right.
In the book, the word Rolex is used multiple times, but brands don't want to be affiliated with mass murder, or the idea of it. So I kind of think that was kind of cool that some of them put their foot down and they're like, nah, you can't use our branding for this.
Right. And it was a fairly low budget movie, so they had to kind of pick and choose.
Where did all the budget go?
Music.
Of course.
Right.
The music rights, yeah.
Sure. All right. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us again. This was a great conversation.
You got it.
You're welcome anytime.
Next time, Requiem for a Dream. We'll do a real mindfuck that time, and it's also Jared Leto.
You don't want to go in the other direction, like happier in any way?
Requiem for a Dream also has its 25th anniversary later this year. Yes. So I did have it on the calendar for October. Also, another movie that has a anniversary this year. It is the 40th anniversary this summer of Sesame Street: Follow That Bird.
Oh, come on. We're in. So, yes, there's your happy one. There's your, happier.
happy?
Well, no, not when he's blue. We can get into that whole thing. No. But that is a more happier movie than American Psycho, and definitely Requiem for a Dream.
I do like that you pause there for a moment where obviously the Big Bird movie is happier. Well, except for this one. No, I think I've never seen either of these films. I think I could probably say.
You never saw Follow That Bird?
No.
That's why you don't get it. When you watch that movie and you get to that scene, you'll immediately remember, oh, that's what Sam meant. Okay, Follow That Bird. Well, that will be your next one.
Okay.
And then if you want to come back for Requiem for a Dream, sure.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Sam. This has been great. That's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about a movie that is also very different from American Psycho and that is also having an anniversary. It is the 50th anniversary of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I have not seen this movie in decades. James, have you ever seen it?
I have never seen this film. I'm going to be ready for laughs.
Okay.
But I am not just going to laugh because I know that this is a quote-unquote classic comedy film.
I don't even know if I would call it a quote-unquote classic comedy. It might be more of a cult classic, which is an important distinction. But we will get into that next week. I'm looking forward to revisiting that movie. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. We are at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. And really, all I want to see when you reach out to us on social media is your business cards. Show us your business cards. We want to compare them. We want to see the font and the coloring. And
It better have a watermark.
if it doesn't have a watermark, we don't care. And yeah, we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Now, if you guys will excuse me, I need to go return some videotapes.